Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and today I'm going to do something totally different with this video. Actually, not totally different, but a little bit different than I usually do, and I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. But before I get into this, if you haven't had a chance yet to reserve your spots for the early bird pricing for our upcoming course launch, please do so. Seriously, this content is, like, if you're getting a lot out of these videos, this content is 10 times better. It gives you step-by-step, in detailed processes to overcome challenges that you're facing, and we're trying to make it accessible to everybody, affordable to everybody. We're having, I asked in some previous videos if you prefer individual course sales or membership options, and a lot of you guys gave me both as what you wanted, like both options, and so we just tailored this exactly to your needs, and we're giving you both options. So we're trying to make it super accessible, very affordable, like really just accessible to basically anybody, and we're making this so in detail that you'll be able to literally come in, pick a course based on whatever challenge or core issue that you're facing, and get your insight, your awareness, your steps for reprogramming, your individualized workbooks, all of the things that you'll need to really transform whatever your challenge is by the end of the time that you're finished the course. So seriously, if you haven't had a chance yet, please sign up. I'm so excited to be sharing this stuff, and I'm really passionate about getting this information out there to people and getting people helped and healed, and giving people the opportunity to just live at their full potential when all of this real estate in their mind isn't taken up by old traumas and past resentments and attachment style challenges. Like, when you're free of that, you start to really live and start to really be able to manifest a clear path for yourself. So anyways, I'm babbling a little bit because I'm really excited to be sharing this, and I've been recording the content and just really excited to be sharing with you guys. So anyways, on to the topic for today. So I want to talk about children of narcissists. So I'm actually going to do something different with the video today. As I was doing some research and trying to sort of make these links and overlap, I came across a beautiful article that I just felt like so deeply articulated many of the core challenges that children of narcissists are facing or have historically been facing. And I wanted to, so this article was by a woman named Shahida Araba, I believe. I should have written it down, but I'm 90% sure it was in Thought Catalog. If you're interested, I'll link it in the description down below at the end of this video. But she wrote this synopsis of a bunch of key traits that children of narcissists take on. And what I've basically done is taken out those key points, developed my own ideas around those key points, and added a whole bunch of my own towards the end. So I think she came up with like 8 or 9 key points. I'm going to give you about 13 today. And I'm going to go through a totally different descriptions than she puts on there, but her points were just absolutely stunning. So I really wanted to share this information with you guys. So first and foremost, one of the traits that the children of narcissists face, or basically come out of their childhood with, is this tendency between the polarity of trusting too much and trusting not enough. And I see this with every single individual I've worked with who is a child of somebody with a narcissist or 2 narcissistic parents. And you know, I want to keep in mind, narcissists, I don't like to label people and demonize people, and we do want to keep in mind a narcissist is just another wounded person. But what we don't want to do is take an understanding that the narcissist is broken and then use that to repress or deny our own needs and violate our own boundaries because we put their feelings above ours. So I'll get into all this stuff in just a moment. So there's this duality between trusting too much and trusting not enough. And what this duality of love demonstrates is the patterning and the programming that the narcissist gives their children. And here's what you'll see. The narcissist, because the narcissist tends to love their child as an extension of themselves, the narcissist can be a very loving parent. They can be very giving and you know, really loving in you know, being a rescuer and showing up and being great at coming through in times of need. And but what this is doing to a certain degree is it's reinforcing to the parent that the parent is a good parent. And the narcissist is deriving a sense of their supply from showing up so profoundly. And the shadow side of the narcissist is that because they love as an extension of themselves and because they cannot handle shame, they spend so much of their lives unconsciously running from shame, what happens is, the narcissist will show up strong in moments of need, but they can tear their child down a lot at the same time. So, a lot of examples I'll see of this is, a narcissist has a child who's in sports, or who is in pageants, or who is in some kind of like paradigm where there's competition. And this narcissistic figure or parent will push the child to such strong degrees, to such great lengths, specifically because they can't handle their child not winning, because they see that child as a direct extension and reflection of themselves, and they love their child as themselves, as opposed to loving the child for their own individual unique needs and traits and opinions and feelings. So instead of doing that, they can't quite accept that. They expect the child to sort of be this doll, or this, this person that they can mold and shape however they so decide. And they punish their child when the child doesn't meet those needs. And yet, because they love that child fiercely in a way that can be loving, but also quite toxic at times, and expectant, and all of that, they also get into this dynamic of like this, there's a duality. So we will trust the child of a narcissist tends to trust deeply, to a certain degree with people, but then be highly suspicious and hypervigilant at the same time in many ways, because there's this baseline foundational trust of not being hurt. And so sometimes these children can be sort of risk takers to a certain degree in their adult lives or early adulthood. And then there's this other piece where there's this hyper suspicion of being hurt or feeling unsafe, or all sorts of things that can evolve from that. So point one, they trust the other individuals in their adult lives so much, but then also not enough. Another one, point two, is that, and again, these are listed in this woman's article, Shahida. Point two, I'll get to the ones I added at the end, is that there's this deep desire for love and for commitment, but tremendous fear at the same time. And what you have to remember is that, there's this image that the narcissist creates, right? The narcissist creates this image of, I love so unconditionally, and I love so much, and I love you, and I will give to you, and we all do anything at the expense of ourselves for others. Like, the narcissist is essentially teaching enmeshment a lot of the time, and codependency to a certain degree. And so there's this image of like, love is beautiful and unconditional and undying, and then yet the narcissist shows up in their behaviors as teaching that love is conditional, because they shame their child when the child doesn't meet the needs or expectations that they have, or they punish their child or manipulate, or all these different things. So there's these positive associations to this ideal of love that's expressed, and often, remember, one of the traits in the DSM as well for the diagnosis of a narcissistic personality disorder is literally unlimited fantasies of beauty, power, or ideal love. And that's one of the criteria out of 9 criteria to diagnose the narcissist. So they tend to, not always, but tend to present or portray these images of ideal love and perfect love, and yet they show up in their behaviors quite differently. And this happens the most when the child of a narcissist is young. As the child develops their independence and autonomy, a lot of narcissistic parents will try to control or hover over their children and stop their child from developing that independence. But once they sort of recognize that independence is there, they tend to scale back quite a bit, and there tend to be shifts in these relationship dynamics. But when this child is young, this shows up very, very strongly. Number 3, trait of a child of a narcissistic parent or parents: hypervigilance. Okay, so because you had to act a certain way, behave a certain way, because there were mood swings in the house, or the home was often unsafe, or there was feelings of being attacked or shamed, or because the expectations were so high and the emotions were so strong in the home, there's usually a certain level of toxicity or feeling of unsafety for that child. And so this child learns to be hypervigilant and hyper attuned to their parents and to everybody around them as basically an adaptation or survival strategy because of the environment that they're facing. So the subconscious mind goes, okay, if I can be hyper aware of what my parents' emotions are, or this parent, if it's the narcissist, but oftentimes there's both parents have some kind of unhealthy, at least enmeshment or codependency between the two of them. So often just the home is unsafe in general if there's one parent that's a narcissist. If not, there can often be 2 parents who are narcissists. And so, of course, this produces this hypervigilance and often like hyper-perfectionism. Like often the child of a narcissistic parent or parents tends to be such a perfectionist because they're so afraid of making mistakes, because making mistakes for them in their childhood was not acceptable. It was deeply worthy of punishment, right? So there becomes this adaptation or coping mechanism to become that hypervigilant perfectionist in order to survive. Number 4, terrible boundaries. Guess why? Boundaries didn't mean anything in your household a lot of the time. The narcissistic parent is not concerned with your boundaries. In fact, they're often not even aware that another individual has boundaries because of that sense of entitlement or grandiosity that the narcissist has. They believe that they are able to bulldoze the boundaries of other people, especially their children, who they see as direct extensions of themselves, who should sort of fit into the mold that they set out for this child. And again, like the narcissist isn't always, it's so strange because narcissists can be very loving creatures to their children. Often like children of narcissists will tell me things like, oh my gosh, he or she would always show up in times of need. If I ever really need anything, they would come through for me. And so on one level, there's like this security that the narcissist provides. And that's where that duality of trust and not trusting comes in. But on the other level, there's this deep emotional insecurity. So there's like a survival and foundational security, but not an emotional security that's capable, that the narcissist is capable of providing. And so what are boundaries? Well, boundaries are basically our feelings and needs as individuals that then become expressed, that create the sense of where somebody ends and another person begins. And so the narcissist will completely not even regard these sorts of things. And this can be physical, this can be mental, emotional, this can be spatial, it can be all sorts of different things, but there tends to be this very strong lack of boundaries for the child of a narcissist in their adult life. And I believe I have a video on this. I'll do another video on this, just the boundaries itself. But boundaries are essentially your feelings and needs being expressed. That's what a boundary is. It's what your emotions are and what your needs are and the actual expression of it, okay? So just as sort of a point there. And in fact, on this point number 4 with awful boundaries, often what I see is that the child of a narcissist tends to be quite dissociated from their own feelings and needs in real time. So often they're not even aware. If you take the child of a narcissist and you put them in a group of people, a room full of people, or you put them with a couple other people, often these individuals, these children of narcissists, will report to me that they don't even know what they're feeling in real time. If somebody were to say to you, you know, what did you feel when the person said what they did? And it was something offensive, let's say, this individual won't be able to know what their feelings were in real time. They won't be able to think, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable, or oh, this makes me feel sad, because they're so attuned to the other people that they're with, because that was how their brain adapted. So it dissociated or disconnected from their own feelings and needs and became hyper attuned to those of others. Okay, so poor boundaries, of course, because that was a way that you survived and adapted to your environment at a very young age. Number 5, this incessant waiting for the other shoe to drop. Why? Because it's a reflection of your childhood. Your subconscious mind essentially tries to maintain its comfort zone of whatever programs and patterns it recognized in early life. It tends to reproject and assume that its external environment will become that in your own adult life, right? So it's like your childhood almost gets projected as your worldview to certain degrees in later life. So if you were always, you know, on the roller coaster in childhood, and, you know, if there was a good moment, it was usually followed by chaos or resentment or, you know, the downfall of the roller coaster, then you're expecting the same thing in your adult life as well. And again, that's its own subconscious program. And as long as we have that program, our subconscious mind works to actually recreate the output of these programs, because your subconscious mind goes, okay, in really scary situations or really painful situations, what happened? Well, we survived. And the subconscious is just concerned with survival. It's not concerned with your happiness and emotional thriving. So I mean, at least not to hardly any degree, right? So So what happens is your subconscious mind, if you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and if that's a program, you will also be creating patterns of behavior to self-sabotage when you're happy for too long, because you're going to be assuming that this drop is coming and you better protect yourself, as early on in advance as you can. So these programs tend to become their own self-fulfilling prophecies, and you really want to be aware of this and do the repatterning work around this. Number 6, there's a tendency to be enmeshed with toxic people. Same reason as before. Our subconscious mind wants to create a comfort zone because we survived these painful circumstances in the past. Your subconscious actually builds largely positive associations to them, which means when another toxic person or somebody who's advantageous or who tends to exploit others, when they come into your space, it'll be a subconscious comfort zone for what love is. Or if somebody's a taker or is emotionally unavailable, subconscious comfort zone for what love is. So children of narcissists tend to be most attracted to other individuals who are similar to this or who make them feel a similar way as that parent did, because those are their earliest associations for what love is and was, and because they believe to a certain degree that, okay, we know this worked and we stayed alive, so it must be safe. Okay. Number 7, fiercely independent. Children of narcissists tend to be fiercely independent. And I would add to this, because remember, I'm giving you these key points from the article. Actually, this is the last key point from the article, and then I have a few more that I'm adding in here that are patterns that I noticed. I would say that there's this duality again between fiercely independent and fiercely codependent. Codependent being the self-sacrifice of one's own feelings and needs and boundaries in order to please others, okay? I mean, there's lots of, that's not the definition of codependency, but that would be a great North Star if you're trying to figure out what codependency is. That's a great way of checking. So the codependency comes from, again, subconscious comfort zone, but the fierce independence comes from that often you went through something called parentification when you were a young child, which is that this narcissistic parent, or often the other parent that's married to the narcissistic parent or with the narcissistic parent in a relationship, because oftentimes what I see when there's one narcissistic parent is that the other parent who's with them, if they're not a narcissist themselves, they are very codependent, and they tend to put the feelings and emotions onto that young child and make that child feel or perceive that they are responsible for managing one, if not both, of the parent's emotions. Okay, so oftentimes when there's a narcissistic parent, the other parent or the narcissist themselves forces that child, both of them really, to grow up so quickly and to be so in the midst of so many adult things that they don't need to be in the midst of. If this is you and you're like watching this video and you're checking off all these points and just want to learn more, a great thing to look up as well is something called PAS, parental alienation syndrome. It's like when one parent tries to turn the child against the other and sort of uses the child as a pawn or a resource to take control or power over the other parent, because like, oh, if the child's on my side, then I get some kind of one-up on my partner. This is usually if there's two narcissists butting heads in a relationship and there's this major power struggle. There's all kinds of stuff that's really interesting in here, and I could just go on and on. But the root of this point, number 8, is that the child tends to be, this is number 7, fiercely independent, when able to figure things out on their own, come up with solutions, great at persevering, work well under pressure, very hardworking, push themselves extremely, far, and tend to be quite successful in their careers if they didn't end up as an addict or going through some kind of other really painful situation. But again, this is because at a very young age, they had to learn how to grow up and solve problems and figure it out, because they weren't getting their emotional needs met and they weren't made to feel safe in their environment at home. So they had to figure out how to find that sense of safety within themselves and solve problems themselves, take care of others, take care of their parents when there was chaos in the home. Like a lot of these things create this, those are all sort of like things that would fall under the umbrella of parentification. Number 8, I find that the child or children of narcissists or a narcissist tend to have a huge fear of receiving. Why? Because usually when they were with that parent, the narcissist would hold the thing that they were receiving over their head. So for example, the narcissist gives you something and then later they guilt you for it. There's a lot of guilt tripping going on in the narcissistic home. There's a lot of this parent saying to the child, like, oh, I do everything for you. I drive you everywhere. I pay for everything for you. I do this and I do that, almost like you owe me. And so what the child learns is that they cannot receive unconditionally. And they learn that their needs are later going to come back and sort of blow up in their face, and they're going to be guilted or shamed for these things. So this child tends to grow up feeling like the only safe way of really getting through is to meet their own needs themselves by themselves, and to meet the needs of others almost hypervigilantly, so that they can get some form of one-way emotional connection back. Okay, because sometimes that was the only way that this young child got presents. If I'm super there for mom or super there for dad, at least I get like these breadcrumbs of attention when I'm not getting much attention otherwise. And again, I'm wired to have some kind of two-way connection coming into this world as a human being. That's when we come into the world, one of our only biological fears, we have 3 biological fears, period, and one of the only ones we have is the fear of abandonment. So we're wired to receive this attention and have this two-way attunement in a relationship happening. And if one or both parents are not emotionally capable of this, it's really easy to sort of fall into this trap of over giving and overextending, and then also fearing receiving, which puts you at this like deficit all the time, and this fear of feeling like a burden, this fear of accepting help or favors from other people. And the body and the mind cannot sustain a healthy state of well-being if there's this constant imbalance between what you give to others and what you receive from others. So if you are not giving back to yourself and replenishing yourself in a very, very healthy and conscious, intentional way, then you can't uphold this dynamic, because you'll just always be operating at a deficit. And honestly, this leads to long-term health challenges, depression, anxiety, addiction, you name it. This can be a really big underlying core pattern. So keep that in mind. The next thing is, and I think this is so interesting, so number 9, this duality of sharing and hiding, this duality of opening up and sharing and being open, and then hiding and not wanting to share, and keeping very specific things private. Oftentimes, that's how the child grows up. The narcissist asks them questions or demands to know about their life, or does hold space for interesting conversations. And then at the same time, the narcissist makes them feel very unsafe about certain emotions, opinions, feelings, needs they might have. And so you get into this duality of the child wanting to share, wanting to connect, thinking that certain things are safe, certain things are okay, and other things are totally not okay and totally not safe. So there's this big shame and hiding and sort of splitting off aspects of their identity between being open and being quite closed. And oftentimes the child of a narcissist, individuals around them will find them to be very likable, because of course you have to be charismatic and attuned and hypervigilant and all these different things. So they find them to be charismatic and very present and very able to connect deeply and give a lot. And so oftentimes people really take to this individual, but a lot of these individuals will tell me things like, oh, people say that I'm one of their closest friends or such a good friend, and I don't feel that close to them. And the reason for this is because there's a split part of yourself that you're not sharing. And so much of closeness is about two-way vulnerability between individuals. Number 10. Okay, so I have 3 more, and actually the 3 coming up are probably the most powerful. Number 10, a great capacity for deep love. One thing that's really beautiful about the child of a narcissist is that they learn to love almost unconditionally. I think that we are all capable, and we all are basically made of unconditional love at our core, but I think we get covered up with all these layers of painful programming and patterns and fears that make us act out of our ego mind and block us from the true expression of that a lot of the time. But and the child of a narcissist can have a lot of their own stuff, for sure, that they need to work on and reprogram and all kinds of stuff. But there's one aspect of them that tends to be very capable of feeling for other people. They tend to be sort of social justice warriors, champions of the underdog, like all these different things, because They have this capacity for deep love, and this is because they had to learn to love their parents even in all of their pain. They had to learn to love their parents despite being hurt, despite being vulnerable, and a lot of the times they learned how to do that. Now, this won't always be the case, and it's okay completely if you withdrew from your parents, or you're still angry at your parents, or frustrated, or any of that. That is completely okay, and very healthy to have a strong boundary around your parents if you are the child of narcissists. But you will tend to notice, at least in your patterning, that you have a great capacity for deep love for other people. Number 11, riddled with guilt. I'm going to do a whole other video about this, but this is extraordinarily important. The impact of guilt on our physiology, on our actual physical health, immune system, repair, function, everything, is 10 out of 10 major. So because your hypervigilance in childhood made you safer, and because feeling more for other people's feelings, dissociating from your own, was one of the safest adaptations you could make living in the home as a child of a narcissist or narcissists, and because you tend to be manipulated by one or both parents in that home, whether it's a narcissist and a codependent, or two narcissists together coexisting, what you learn is that you learn to just be way more tuned into everybody else's feelings and needs than your own. You're taught that sacrifice a lot of the time is righteous and good, and being self-sacrificial, and nobody having boundaries are positive, and we should let go of our needs and do for others. And a lot of this is a form of manipulation to a certain degree. And a lot of it too is just pure unconsciousness in the narcissist or the codependent, or both narcissists. And you're often guilt tripped a lot as a form of manipulation. So here's what happens. You're riddled with guilt, and this guilt will be everywhere. Like if this is you and you're watching this video, and again, you're checking off all these boxes, please start one practice that I swear by. Keep a guilt journal for 10 days, for 2 weeks, just to notice how often you're feeling guilt throughout the day. Start becoming aware of it. And then I'll make this whole other video, and I have a course coming out on this. Like, these are really important things. Dr. Gabor Mate, who's an amazing author and writer, talks about how guilt is one of the #1 underlying causes. There's all these case studies, and he's done a ton of research on this to show that this is one of the #1 underlying causes that creates autoimmune disorders, addiction, all kinds of pain. So guilt is very heavy and painful emotion. We really want to check in with ourselves and start reprogramming and removing if it's too far out of balance. And again, please check out my other video if this is you, because we often think that guilt is right and good, but guilt actually covers us up from fixing or solving the underlying root problem. And I don't want to get into this too much in this video, so please check out my other video in detail about guilt and how to reprogram and repattern it. But guilt, if anything, just serves for an instant to notice that we made a mistake or did something wrong, but we don't need to feel guilty in order to recognize that we made an error, to correct it without criticism, without punishment, without guilting and shaming ourselves, and to do the right thing. And hurt people. So the more guilty you are, actually the more likely you are to recreate and repattern more guilt in your mind. I'm sort of rushing because I'm realizing this video is very long, but please check that out. It is so important. The last 2 points, I'm going to make them super quickly because I actually am really running out of time. And I'll add more videos to this because I think this is such an important topic. The last 2 points, number 11 and 12. Children of narcissists are often extremely hardworking, and they are often fearful, avoidant attachment styles. And I will come back to this and make more videos and information about this. Please check out my video on guilt. And again, please sign up for these online courses if you hadn't had the chance to already, to reserve your early bird prices. They're 25% off right now until launch. And all you have to do is go to the Personal Development School website. You can look down below and click on transformational course offerings under courses. Put in the courses you want to reserve for early bird pricing with your name, your email, that's it. And you will have it reserved for the discounted rate. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being a part of this journey with me. I really appreciate all the comments, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and I will see you soon.